If I told you that the civilization Rome feared most was not a barbarian tribe, not a collapsing kingdom, but a wealthy, advanced superpower that once dominated the Mediterranean and was deliberately erased from history. In British schools, we learn about Rome, we learn about emperors, legions, and the foundations of Western civilization. But we rarely hear the full story of Carthage, the empire that nearly destroyed Rome itself. Tonight, we uncover the rise, power, and brutal destruction of the city Rome hated so much. It wiped it from the map. Carthage began not as a conqueror, but as a colony. Around the 9th century BCE, Phoenician traders from the city of Tyre sailed westward. They were merchants, masters of navigation, astronomy, and long-distance commerce. The Phoenicians were among the first true global traders of the ancient world. Their alphabet would influence Greek and later Latin writing systems, meaning even Rome's language carried distant echoes of Carthaginian ancestry. When these settlers arrived on the North African coast, in what is now Tunisia, they did not arrive to conquer, they arrived to trade, but geography gave them destiny. Protected natural harbors, fertile inland plains, access to Mediterranean trade corridors, that settlement became Carthage. And within centuries, it transformed from a modest outpost into a maritime superpower. While Rome was still consolidating control over Italy, Carthage already commanded a vast commercial network. It controlled North Africa, Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica. Its navy was unmatched. Its merchant fleets moved silver from Iberian mines, grain from North African farms, and luxury goods across the Mediterranean. Unlike Rome, Carthage expanded strategically through trade alliances and economic dominance rather than sheer territorial occupation. Its most remarkable achievement was the Carthaginian harbour, a circular naval port engineered with precision. Docking bays radiated outward like spokes of a wheel, while a central command island allowed admirals to oversee fleets efficiently. This was not accidental growth. It was calculated urban planning. Wide avenues, multi-story homes, industrial quarters, sacred temples, administrative districts. Carthage was organized, disciplined, and economically driven. And that frightened Rome. Carthage's greatest weapon was not the sword, it was wealth. The city operated what we might call an ancient multinational trade empire. Colonies supplied metals, grain, timber, and textiles. Carthaginian merchants redistributed them at profit. Agricultural manuals written in Carthage were later translated into Latin because even Rome admired their farming expertise. After military defeat in the Second Punic War, Carthage recovered economically with astonishing speed. Within decades, it was prosperous again. For Rome, that recovery was more alarming than Hannibal's elephants. Because wealth sustains power, and Carthage had mastered wealth. Carthage was not ruled by kings during its height. Carthage was not ruled by kings during its height. It functioned under a republican system with two annually elected magistrates and a powerful senate composed largely of elite merchant families. Greek philosopher Aristotle once praised Carthage's constitution, comparing it favorably to other Mediterranean governments. It was stable, balanced, administrative. While Rome glorified military virtue, Carthage prioritized commercial strategy. Two different visions of civilization were colliding. As Rome expanded beyond Italy, it inevitably collided with Carthage. The spark, Sicily, both powers desired this strategically placed island, and so began the First Punic War, a brutal naval conflict lasting over 2 decades. Rome, inexperienced at sea, copied Carthaginian ship designs and rapidly built its own fleet. That adaptability would become Rome's defining strength. Carthage lost the first war, but it was far from finished. Hannibal Barca was not merely a general. He was a strategist of rare brilliance. In 218 BCE, instead of confronting Rome at sea, he marched from Spain across the Pyrenees, through southern Gaul, and over the Alps, with elephants. The journey itself was legendary, but what followed was devastating. At Trebia, at Lake Trasimene, and especially at Cannae. At Cannae, Hannibal executed a double envelopment maneuver so flawless it remains studied in British military academies today. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers died in a single day. For over a decade, Rome lived in fear. Hannibal proved Rome was not invincible. And that psychological shock changed Roman military doctrine forever. So why didn't Hannibal capture Rome? Rome, meanwhile, adapted. Political divisions prevented consistent reinforcements. Rome, meanwhile, adapted. Under Scipio Africanus, Rome shifted strategy, attacking Carthage's territories in Spain and eventually invading North Africa itself. Hannibal was forced home. In 200 BCE, at Zama, Rome defeated him. Carthage survived, but heavily restricted, its navy reduced, its tribute immense, its military power limited, yet economically, it revived. And that revival would seal its fate. Despite Carthage's compliance, Rome remained uneasy. A Roman senator, Cato the Elder, ended every speech with one chilling sentence: Carthage must be destroyed. It became less about security and more about elimination. In 149 BCE, Rome launched the Third Punic War. This time, it was not conquest. It was extermination, but Rome did not immediately attack. First, it demanded impossible concessions. Carthage was ordered to hand over hostages. It complied. Then it was ordered to surrender its weapons. It complied again. Finally, Rome demanded that the entire population abandon the city and relocate inland, leaving Carthage to be destroyed. That was the breaking point. Carthage refused. For Rome, the decision had already been made. The war was not reactive. It was premeditated. The existence of a wealthy, recovering rival, even a disarmed one, was unacceptable. Rome no longer wanted dominance. It wanted permanence. For 3 years, Carthage resisted. Citizens forged weapons from scrap metal. Women reportedly cut their hair to make ropes for war machines. Street by street, they fought. In 146 BCE, Roman forces broke through. Fires consumed the city. Thousands were slaughtered, survivors enslaved. The siege itself was brutal urban warfare. Roman troops advanced house by house, rooftop by rooftop, facing desperate defenders who knew surrender meant enslavement. Ancient accounts describe 6 days of continuous fighting within the city walls. Buildings collapsed, temples were looted. Smoke darkened the Mediterranean sky. When it ended, an estimated 50,000 survivors were sold into slavery. Whether or not the soil was salted, symbolically the message was clear: no rival would ever rise again. Carthage was not merely defeated, it was erased as a political force. After destruction came narrative. Roman historians painted Carthage as cruel, greedy, barbaric. Stories of ritual sacrifice became central to that portrayal. Modern archaeology debates these claims, suggesting exaggeration may have justified total war. History is often written by victors, and Rome wrote thoroughly. By shaping public memory, Rome ensured future generations would see the Punic Wars as a moral necessity rather than imperial aggression. Carthage became a cautionary tale, an example of what happens to those who challenge Roman destiny. Yet archaeological findings reveal advanced craftsmanship, vibrant trade networks, and evidence of cultural exchange across continents. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. Rome did not simply destroy a city. It controlled the story of that destruction. And stories can be as powerful as armies. Here is history's irony. A century later, Rome rebuilt Carthage under Julius Caesar and Augustus. It became a major Roman city. Its land was too fertile, its location too strategic. Even in death, Carthage was indispensable. Even in death, Carthage was indispensable. The rebuilt city quickly grew into one of the most important urban centers in the Western Roman Empire, second only to Rome itself in parts of North Africa. Grain shipments from the region fed Roman citizens. Trade flourished once again through the same harbors that had once launched Carthaginian fleets. Rome had destroyed the political power of Carthage, but it could not ignore the advantages geography offered. Empires may fall, but strategic locations endure. In rebuilding Carthage, Rome quietly acknowledged what it had always known. Its greatest rival had chosen its home wisely. Imagine a Mediterranean led by merchants instead of legions. Would empire have evolved differently? Would European expansion have prioritized commerce over conquest? Would Britain's later maritime dominance have drawn more from Carthaginian models than Roman ones? History turned on narrow margins. At Cannae, Rome came dangerously close to collapse. If more Italian allies had defected permanently, if reinforcements had reached Hannibal, if Carthage's Senate had acted decisively, the balance might have shifted. A Carthaginian-led Mediterranean could have reshaped law, governance, and cultural exchange across Europe. Instead of Latin dominance, perhaps Phoenician influence would have deepened. Instead of land-based imperial expansion, maritime networks might have defined Western civilization earlier. We cannot rewrite history, but we can recognize how fragile its turning points truly are. Britain understands naval power. It understands trade networks. It understands rivalry between great powers. Carthage's story echoes through later empires. Like Britain centuries later, Carthage relied heavily on maritime supremacy to protect commerce and project influence. Sea lanes were lifelines. Economic strength funded defense. Naval control shaped diplomacy. But Carthage also reveals the vulnerability of trade-based empires when confronted by highly militarized rivals. Britain's own history includes moments where economic dominance faced existential threats. Carthage reminds us that supremacy is never guaranteed. Power shifts, alliances change, and even the wealthiest empires must adapt, or risk being overtaken by those willing to commit fully to war. Today, ruins in Tunisia continue to reveal Carthage's complexity. Harbors, homes, marketplaces, infrastructure. Each discovery challenges the Roman narrative. Excavations have uncovered intricate mosaics, imported pottery from distant regions, and evidence of advanced shipbuilding industries. Burial sites suggest structured religious practices and social hierarchy. Far from being a chaotic or primitive society, Carthage appears organized and internationally connected. Modern historians increasingly view it as a cosmopolitan hub, a crossroads between Africa, Europe, and the Near East. Every layer of soil removed brings nuance to a story once told in black and white. Carthage was not merely Rome's enemy. It was a civilization in its own right, and its voice, though nearly silenced, still speaks through the ruins. Share this video, subscribe, like and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice keeps these lost civilizations alive.